Welcome to our TAI seminar series discussion today. So we have Associate Professor of Data Science from UNSW, Rohitash Chandra, and he has discussion with Dr. John Hawkins, who is also a member of TAI research group at UNSW. The topic for today is impact of AI in the workplace. I want to introduce John Hawkins, who just launched his new book on data science first using language models in AI-enabled applications today at UNSW bookstore. So just a short biography. So John is an Australian data scientist and the author of the book Getting Data Science Done. So he's the chief scientist for EdTech company Playground XYZ, and then affiliate researcher with the transitional-ai group at UNSW. So he has 20 years of experience in solving problems in industry and academia, and then he has written more than 30 peer-reviewed academic articles and presented at academic and industry conferences around the world. So let's just go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eka. I'd just like to congratulate John here. Thanks, John, for coming, and congratulations for getting this book published.
Thank you.
How does it feel?
Very good. It's a relief to get it done. It was less painful than the first time I wrote a book because I kind of knew what to expect and I was more militant in how I went about it. And this one was also, as we all know, AI is a rapidly changing field. So it was very much felt like I was running on hot sand to make sure that I was going fast enough to include enough of the relevant details that wouldn't become sort of redundant.
Well, it's great to hold a book like this. And I think it's like we are more used to a publishing culture where we do journal papers and conference proceedings. And so just could you briefly tell our students and researchers, how do you go about publishing a book?
Yeah. So it's interesting. This time, the first book, I made lots of errors. One of them ones was that I thought I should write it all and get it close to perfect before I approach publishers. And the first thing I learned was most publishers want to be involved a lot earlier on. So this time, when I had the sort of an introduction and a strong sense of what the content would be, I then went to publishers directly and proposed the book and sort of pitch it, which is how I started working with Wiley to get this one done. So that's kind of the first big thing. The second thing is, I think, like as you'd know with teaching, right? Often the hard thing is remembering what it's like not to know something so that you can explain it in a way that people can sort of get it. So I think when you're writing a book like this, which is designed to help people on the journey of understanding language models and being able to use them in different ways, you have to think back to what it was like not to have that knowledge and then introduce it in the right order that makes it easy for people to follow.
All right. So for the general audience out there who are not from computer science, so you have these couple of catchy words in your title, right? You have data science there, you have language models, and you have AI-enabled applications. Could you briefly define
each of those terms?
Yes.
Yeah, so data science is a contested term, but it sort of came into common usage roughly 15 to 20 years ago, when essentially, I guess with the birth of large-scale internet companies, these were organizations that felt like they had a need for a new kind of employee who was able to both program, deal with diverse data stores, and then analyze that data in a way that would be beneficial to the business. For example, just things like the canonical example was being able to predict customers who would churn or working out what's resulting in conversions for an organization, that kind of thing. So it became this new kind of technical job that combined both the knowledge of statistics and mathematics with programming, with some kind of understanding of business analysis, so that you could come up with solutions that had measurable impact on organizations. Language models is a term that effectively, it means a few different things to different people, but the essence of it is that it's some kind of statistical model of the structure of language. So often that it would be some kind of probability model of the likelihood one word following another, or some kind of model that can generate a vector that represents the semantics of words or sentences, but essentially some numerical way of ingesting text and representing it. And then finally, an AI-enabled applications means it's more for the software engineering audience, where you're building an application that does many different things. Maybe people sort of use it, they enter some data, they do some searching and that kind of thing. The AI-enabled component means how you insert AI components in with all of the other software engineering components. So it's not just AI; it's a larger project.
Right. So, what does it offer to the students?
Yep. Okay. Awesome.
What category of students you're looking at with this book, for example?
Yeah. So it's designed for effectively anyone who does any kind of programming. So whether that's a data scientist or a mathematician, a statistician, or a sort of pure software engineer who is looking for something that will introduce the concept of a language model to get a sense of what the landscape of models and platforms and packages out there that they could be using are, and then a set of design patterns on how to use them. So an initial chapter is on semantic vectors of representation, using things like sort of BERT models for classifiers, through to sort of visualization of what those semantic vector representations are, and then a bunch of ways that people have discovered you can use language models in sort of more machine learning applications. Zero and few shot prompting is one of the ideas, a thing called retrieval augmented generation, synthetic data generation. Basically, every chapter kind of introduces that concept of how you can use a language model, and then does a worked example using open data sets on how you would do this in practice.
So BERT does not relate to the correct
identity. Yeah.
But just curious, so there's a nice, I've seen some tutorials where they've put, to define BERT models, they've put the TV corrector.
Yeah, I liked it.
That's good, yeah. So let's talk a bit about AI research in industry in the scope of Australia and going beyond this. Like, what do you think? How is Australia progressing with AI research?
Yeah,
and
adoption. So I think Australia's been a reasonably strong adopter of new technologies, if not necessarily a strong kind of industry researcher. So I think, for example, at least in Sydney in particular, our financial services industry has been a strong adopter. So we, like in the previous big push for AI technology, which was automated machine learning, happened about a decade ago. It was reasonably well adopted in sort of financial services. The same thing is kind of happening with the use of language models. So we are seeing there's heavy use of the pattern, which is called retrieval augmented generation, in industry in Australia. So companies building kind of internal knowledge bases and chat-based applications that allow people to sort of retrieve the most relevant documentation from the corporate document store. They also use it a little bit for things like templating of documents. So some of the big consulting companies have an AI system that allows them to quickly generate a document following their kind of standardization. So that's one of the big application areas. And then finally, AI code generation is seeing pretty large scale adoption across many companies in Australia.
There have been news about mass firing of software engineers, for example, from Commonwealth Bank, CBA. So what do you think? How is this field going to progress, the software engineering and design with this AI?
It's a tough topic. I think the ambiguity is that it's not clear that that's just AI code generation that's responsible for that. So, for example, we know that during the COVID period, they overhired because they thought the whole world was going to go nothing but online and everything was going to be done remotely. So there was overhiring across the tech sector. We also had the problem that interest rates were very, very low, right? So it's very easy to hire lots of people when capital doesn't cost you anything. But as soon as it costs you more to borrow money, then a lot of companies start doing the calculation of like what it costs us to have certain employees. I think the other thing is that there has been the term that's emerged is the SaaSpocalypse, which is that people are concerned that a lot of the software as a service companies out there, like companies like Atlassian, for example, were worried that because AI generation and coding assistants are so effective, maybe more companies would build their own bespoke versions of the tools that these companies had been historically offering. So we don't know what the exact combination is for any particular layoff. We've also been teetering on the edge of a little bit of a recession for a while. So I guess all of these things have been combining for a tightening of the job market. My feeling is that as we're discovering that typically the people who are most effective with AI code generation tends to be experienced software developers or experienced technical people, there will be a bit of a little bit of a rehiring, or the challenge, I think, for universities and for junior developers is how do you get the skills to be effective with the AI coding tools as quickly as possible so that you are appealing when the jobs start coming again.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm quite curious what the future job market will be like, right?
Yeah.
Especially we have big population of computer science and data science students. So what do you think will happen in the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah. So I'm hopeful that we see the kind of the equation that I like to say is that, and I'm certainly not the first person or the only person to make this observation, and that is that there's lots of ideas out there for software products or software services that previously haven't been built because the cost of building them was too high, perhaps. So new tools are allowing companies to explore those ideas cheaper than before, which means we should see the birth of a whole bunch of new companies and services created with these tools. And ultimately, those tools will get to the point where they start needing people to sort of sustain them and maintain them and the jobs that come around that. So I think we will see a bit of a regrowth in the economy once that wave starts to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have so far. I mean, I haven't been using AI tools myself so much, but just last 2 months, I've been using, just exploring. So I think we have been wasting a lot of time in improving figures and plots when we're writing papers. So the multimodal LLMs, they are quite good in, you give them a figure and you ask them to increase the tick labels, legend size, and all those things, right?
Yeah.
It does it very well for you for free most of the time, and there's some limits. In ChatGPT, does it very well.
Yeah.
Right. So, so that is like we would like. I mean, as an academic, I would want the research students or researchers collaborating with me to focus more time in creatively thinking of a solution for tough problems.
Yeah.
And I think people who are saying that, with AI, jobs are replaced, people are going to be useless and stuff. This is not going to happen. It may happen in places which cannot creatively change the job landscape.
Yeah.
But humanity is not going to be in short of problems, basically, anytime soon, right? So we will need maybe like, there's like, if I think about my education, there's a lot of things I have studied in my university days, which are not really used. Like I know how to design microprocessors, operating system. I've taught those courses. I don't use them anymore, right? And this I could relate with a lot of other students there. There's a lot of things we have done that we are not using. And that could be the same as like we need to not learn how to actually plot a figure.
Yeah.
Matplotlib code or Seaborn code. Maybe we know the overview of it, but we do not need to learn the nitty-gritty details if AI can do it for us.
Yeah.
We just say, okay, because for a long time, I mean, there's like people in the humanities and others, they don't really write code to make plots anyways, right? They get some data, some samples, and Excel makes the plots, right? We are like, okay, those plots are not so nice looking in Excel, so we want to generate code to do it, right? And we do spend hours trying to perfect it, right? So I think maybe it's going to free us. AI technologies are going to free us from doing all these nitty-gritty things, like how to improve your presentation. And how to make plots, and also proofreading papers, right? So this is good, the AI part. The thing that I am very worried about is most of the papers coming from our group, from the students I supervise and collaborations, I am the corresponding author. So I do spend a lot of time, actually waste a lot of time submitting papers and going through the revision process. So it's like a dozen journals. I have a list of it, and they get rejected. Then I have to assign it to another journal, and sometimes out of school. And so what has been happening now from, I mean, this is just like a year ago, I see that my workload has kind of increased. Because what is happening, the AI, even the leading journals, a lot of them are using AI to review papers. And so when AI bots are reviewing papers, we have like really extensive, massive reviews, and it depends what prompts the reviewer has asked. So instead of getting 2 or 3 reviews, now we have 8 or 10 reviews coming. And they are very demanding. It's like tearing the paper apart, and it's and now there are cases where I had to go through 4 stages of the review process and really responding so much to the review process, convincing the AI bots. And these are just people browsing through after they see our response. And the associate editors of the journals have no time for this because they are volunteers. The reviewers have no time for this. I guess it's not something AI to be blamed.
Do you think it's the journals asking people to review it, and then the reviewers using the AI, or the journals themselves putting AI review bots on it?
It looks like it's a combination of these, right? So I think the way it operates, like IEEE, Springer, and Elsevier are major computer science and engineering journals. They run most of them. There's an associate editor, and I'm associate editor. I have acted as associate editor in the past. So what is happening is, like, as an associate editor, when I was for IEEE transactions or neural networks, for example, like they were assigning me 25 or 30 papers a year. And for each paper, I would invite 30 or 40 people to review papers, and probably 1 or 2 will accept. Because people know it takes a lot of time, and the reviewers, they are not paid for the service. So it's usually PhD students end up doing it, or postdocs. You don't have really senior people really reviewing. So the whole idea of independent review process in science is kind of gone, because the journals are like, oh, and they get some of them charge open access fees, and they get $2,000, $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 for a paper. Like you have Science and Nature, they get a lot of money. So what happens, I don't know, it is out of curiosity that more people are accepting reviews, or is it that the associate editor is just generating reviews and sending it to us, that these are people who have generated the reviews based on different prompts. So it could be even that, because sometimes the paper is sitting there for more than 6 months, And sometimes it's sitting with an associate editor for 3 months. It's not gone into the review process.
Yeah.
So we do have a massive problem in the publication game of AI research and just research in general that really needs to be addressed by academics. Otherwise, we are really... the thing is that we are... the downside of this whole thing, that the real concern is that you have academics who are using AI to write papers, some assistance in writing papers, and then you have... so you are replacing academics with AI. Then you're replacing the reviewers with AI. So it's just AI at writing and reviewing itself, right? So it's like there's not much response from human in the loop because the humans are not getting paid for it. So that's really going to change. I don't know. I don't really know what the solution for this, unless it's like the US government, Australian government, or the Indian government, because they end up eventually paying for the services because their libraries are paying millions of dollars to the journals. The universities are paying millions of dollars for open access fees, right? So if they say that, because the universities are also funded by the government, they say that, okay, these are some list of things that publishers cannot do. And we have Elsevier, for example, making a couple of $1 billion of profit a year, right? From this whole chaining, underpaying, or not paying anything to the reviewers. And then getting AI in the middle. And then again, now the quality is there. So I wonder what will happen actually. What do you think?
Yeah, it's it's complicated. I mean, it does seem to boil down to broken incentives. It feels like an extension of something that was already a little bit broken anyway.
Yeah, so AI is not the main culprit here.
Yeah.
It's the system that was designed to exploit academics, right? So that system has been kind of leveraged by AI. So I think I'll just change the topic a bit more into I have enough to complain about academia, and the thing is like I'm kind of feeling really overwhelmed by the whole process, and I'm really upset that I don't see this much of discussion on social media by other academics, So it's not a big thing, people are just like, let's just
Trying to survive.
Survival kind of a thing. So this is the problem with AI in education at the moment. So that's just about the research and publication, but there are other things about children coming to universities and then using AI to help them with assignments and then coming and doing an exam, which where there's a restriction of AI.
Yeah.
And exams are not a good way to measure productivity of a student because you can memorize a lot of things for exams. So in the past, they said we want the learning pedagogy to change and adopt more practical learning, right? So now, like if you remove exams and go more into assignments, then you have more AI. And that's another concern. Like, how do you think, what do you think will be the future of education? Like, it's coming from industry for so long, what do you envision the future is? Like, did you actually think it will be like this? I mean, like, you're an AI student from, you did your PhD in AI, right?
Yeah.
What did you think then to what you're thinking now after 20 so years, probably?
Yeah. There's a couple of difficult things. I think that one kind of incentive problem that universities have struggled with for a little while is the fact that you've got a balance between maintaining quality but also maintaining income, right? So how do you make sure that how are you prepared to fail people who should fail, but still get paid, but still have enough income from the students coming in. And that balance has been difficult for universities for a while. I have wondered for some time whether ideally education should actually be split into two things: organizations that basically run tests and rigorously examine students, and then organizations that teach, and have them kind of separate from each other, because they've got different incentives. So that's the first thing. Generally, I think that should happen. I don't know if it will happen. I think the more immediate problem, at least for people, that we sort of interact with, technical people who have to be able to sort of program, do analysis, write papers, is how do you both evaluate them fairly, but also prepare them for a changing way that they do their work. So one of the things that I was talking to the students about before was that when you think about, typically when you build a resume to go into the workforce, you'll have some kind of portfolio. It could be a GitHub repository of projects you've worked on. And the primary goal of that was that a prospective employer could look at your code and see by the nature of that code that you understand that language and the frameworks and the way to solve that problem. That's kind of broken now, because everything on your GitHub repository could be AI generated, which creates a problem for employers. How do they know that you actually know these things? So I think part of it has to be a little bit of a shift in how we put forward those portfolio projects for employers, and start to show the skills that they need in an AI kind of enabled workforce. Is communication becomes more important than ever. Being able to clearly demonstrate that you've understood a problem really well, articulate the way you're solving it and why you're solving it, and then structure how you build the response. So the example I was giving the students was, rather than just have a GitHub repo that just has the project by itself, set it up to use GitHub issue trackers. So you rigorously spell out all of the steps of how you're going to build it. And even if you use AI code generation, capture that in all of your branches and the pull requests, so that your repository is showing that you understand the process of doing software engineering properly, even if you're using AI code generation to do it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to go. Yeah. So changing the discussion a little bit to more issues arising with AI, right? More going into humanities, let's say, because one thing you mentioned, we were having a coffee once, something about project management, right? You see it, and there's a number of universities are like having school of project management, and back in the days, like when I was a student, project management used to be a course in a management program, right? And they have like a whole school now called School of Project Management, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is something that the future labor market will be quite interested in, because the small technical bits are things that AI will be taking over, and you need people with those skills to put them together, right?
Yeah.
So, do you think AI will help in this project management setting?
So I think it's still useful for them, but I think it's there was an interesting sort of aside related to that. It was an interesting paper I've seen a few people talking about. I haven't read it yet. I believe it came out of Stanford in the last few weeks. And hope it's not AI generated, but they're basically saying they've been looking at the strategic advice that executives can get from AI models when they're asking, should I decentralize or centralize, or should I vertically integrate or horizontally integrate? Basically asking for these kind of high level advice about their corporate strategy. And they found a whole bunch of biases in this. First of all, that the models would tend to, if they're asking specifically, if they're in any way prompting that indicates what their preference is, the model will reaffirm it, because the models are very sensitive to pleasing you by agreeing with you. They're also biased to choosing the first option that you give them. So the order in which you ask the question affects the advice they're going to give you. And then they did a whole bunch of really, really interesting tests to test whether the model's reasoning was a true reflection of in any sense of what the actual rationale for a given strategy was, and found all kinds of biases there. So the point of reason I make for that is that at least at the moment, they look extremely problematic for that kind of high-level decision making. I think the kinds of tasks they still can be used for is more when you can explicitly describe the thing that you want done, and it's more mundane and administrative. They're very, very useful, which is why AI code generation is exceptional for creating boilerplate code to get your project kind of started. And the more niche and specific you get, the more focus you need to pay attention you need to pay to make sure it hasn't made mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, one example could be like in computer science, like you teach designing analysis of algorithms course just for students to know. Students are exposed to linked lists, for example, which is the the foundation of arrays and vectors. But you don't really go and implement a linked list these days, right? And that's something you call a NumPy array or something, and then that's in Python, and it takes care of things, right? So those are the more mundane and technical and nitty-gritty thing. And it's like if there was a workforce who implementing the linked lists, they would be out of a job, basically. And that didn't really come about because that was not needed, right?
Yeah.
So
it's true, right? Computer science is in large part the history of abstraction. We always anything that we've done many, many times, we find an abstraction for it so that future people don't have to do the implementation.
And computer science as a field has been moving quite fast and changing itself for a while.
Yeah.
But I think software engineering is where I think what has happened is the reason we have so much of redundancies is because software engineering became more of a field that had a lot of loopholes because the people, the upper managers, they did not know about the process or how much time it takes to design this piece of code. And then when they gave it to AI, they're like, okay, these models can do this very fast. We don't need somebody sitting in here for 6 months, right? And the thing with software engineering, that field, was that plagiarism was not an issue because you could reuse and reuse code, and you don't really need to even cite the source, right? So software engineering was a field where plagiarism was actually promoted, that you do not want to spend so many hours perfecting your code, which may have a bug. And that's how that field flourished, right? So I don't know actually how it will be what will be the future of software engineering with cloud and other things coming in, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it would be more about defining projects.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I think this is another thing I think I was talking with some of the students about is that people who are really effective with the AI coding agents there's a couple of commonalities. First of all, they will rigorously control their contexts and write so what they'll often do is write a markdown file that says what programming languages they're prepared to work with, maybe the packages they want to use, how they want their application structured, the naming conventions for variables, naming conventions for functions, principles like whether they just want pure functions, things like which sort of code checkers and linters and debuggers to use, the procedure for writing and deploying codes and features, right? So these are often very, very, very long markdown files where that have been developed over several projects where they distill down how they like to work, and that puts lots of constraint on the model that's generating the code, because now it's not just generating any code, it's generating code that has to conform to your expectations of how that code should be generated. There's a couple of advantages to that. The first one being that when this developer gets the generation tool to generate some code for them, it's in a style that's easy for them to read and review because it's their own style, which is part of the reason why they're so effective. They're able to read it and review it. And it's also because they know about where this application is going to be deployed, what systems it has to interact with, and their experience captures the things that can go wrong. They've tried to deal with all those possible edge cases in how they've constrained the model, which makes those kind of high-level architectural bugs and problems less likely to happen.
Okay.
Very, very, very much about communication and language and description.
No, I didn't really know the details of these things, John, for really going to details. So this gives me a good picture of how these computer science papers fake papers are probably generated as well, right? That it's hard for a conference reviewers to say it's fake from real, right? And perhaps PhD theses in the future will be generated this way, right? So what's your view about hallucination in AI and what do you think is happening there?
So, I mean, at least for the moment, for the way language models are constructed, it's an inevitability just because of the fact that effectively these things are they generate a probability distribution over tokens, sample from that, feed that back into itself and generate a new probability distribution, right? So if the text that you're generating from is something that's extremely well sampled in the data set, it's going to be constrained enough that hallucination won't happen in a sense because it's effectively just running down paths that are very well worn. But if your prompt is from a space in the total sort of space of possible semantics, something that hasn't been sampled from, the model, the way the models are structured is they've got no way of saying, I don't know anything about that. I'm not going to say anything. They're not capable of doing it. The only way you could do that is actually build infrastructure around it that somehow recognizes that it's venturing into hallucination space. So there are papers coming out in this space, like trying to basically monitoring what's happening inside the language model to test whether it's potentially veering into hallucination space.
Right. I'll just share a bit of experience with my case of with AI. So I was trying to generate a Wikipedia article about AI for cinema. Because I thought, because that's something that our group is quite active with, and it's something that we're coming up with few papers, AI for cinema and music, looking at the abuse, looking at the evolution of themes and other things. And the page that, of course, that Wikipedia page was rejected by Wikipedia because they don't want AI generated content in the first place. But what I saw there were one thing is AI has two problems, right? One is hallucinating.
Yeah.
Another problem is giving blatant lies, actually. It really lies, like it has no shame, basically, that type of lie, right? It will say, this research has been done and this is the evidence of this paper. And that research has not been done and that paper does not exist, right? And it's kind of defended as part of the hallucination. Maybe hallucination is an explanation of the blatant lies, which is quite concerning, right? So the thing is that while hallucinating, AI can actually be useful, very useful in helping us creatively brainstorm. That's why I realized. So there were some things, some projects mentioned there, both for the two pages I created, AI for religion and AI for cinema. And both of them gave me some very good project ideas for things that have not been done by anybody. And it said that those were, when I checked the references, those things did not really exist. The references were fake.
You've even got the paper title.
Paper titles, and it was very interesting. So moving on to the issue about AI and how it will be accepted by the society in the future. What do you think about AI, bots coming in? Well, what do we have now is, for example, we have phones, we have software-driven AI, but we are looking at a future where we are having drones delivering stuff. So we have letting go of Uber Eats, or Uber Eats will be drone based.
Yeah.
And we are seeing a future where people are going to have pets, which are AI pets. And there's a movie, for example, Bicentennial Man and Artificial Intelligence by Steven Spielberg. It showed this AI was a boy, and the parents wanted to adopt a child, so they adopted an AI boy, and he had these emotions, and they wanted to portray the whole theme of love, right? So it's an interesting movie if you haven't seen it. But what do you think? How will it come into play? You know, like that. Like let's say by 2035, we have people buying AI toys, AI pets,
Yeah.
and AI children even, or AI spouses, right? As funny as it sounds, we are going in the direction, and AI soldiers are being developed now.
Yeah.
So that technology to transform into AI, and AI for the workforce, right? Like Amazon and others, they are looking at AI to do more heavy labor-intensive jobs. So, which would be great in some things, right? Like there's a lot of tasks that humans should not be doing. Some of the cleaning tasks, for example.
Exposure to dangerous chemicals or radiation or anything like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And perhaps like going and farming in very, in desert areas where no humans want to go, and it's too hot there. So you have AI going and planting trees and all that. So there's all this good side and there's the bad side, right? So what I'm more concerned about is the interrelationship that humans will have with AI.
Yeah.
What's your view on that? You know, like somebody falling in love with an AI pet or with an AI spouse.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly worry about the degradation of human-to-human interaction. But to be fair, that was driven by I mean, social media was massively contributing to that. The COVID lockdowns massively contributed to that. There's like been other factors other than this the AI thing, although it's certainly true the people. It's concerning that a lot of people have like deeper conversations with ChatGPT or something than they do with their best friends, right? And concerning in part because the model is designed to agree with you no matter what, right? So what you've got is people who are just having all of their ideas being confirmed rather than challenged, which is like a little bit of a worry, particularly given that the core skill that humans need to, I feel like to rewind back to your previous topic, education needs to roll back, I think, a little bit more to critical thinking skills, because the essential thing that remains useful, regardless of whether it's project management or it's like coding with AI agents, is critically thinking about how you're solving this particular problem. So I feel like education has to roll back from certifying people in Python and get back to sort of the way you think about solving problems with computers. And so critical thinking is another thing that's under attack by people just interacting with AI chatbots. And the problem we've got there is the same problem that we had with social media, which was that social media, they're incentivized to basically surround you by people who agree with you and keep you in that bubble and keep you engaged. The chat applications have the same problem, to basically be sycophantic to everything you agree with. So, I mean, I suppose that's just more problems. It's not really a solution. I mean, but I think in your question, you also had something about public reaction. I do think there will be some, in the same way that there are people who abandon social media, there are people who are swearing off using the AI tools. I don't know where the dust is going to settle.
Could be like some societies going out really and saying we'll live this 18th century lifestyle, right? Some kind of cult groups will emerge.
That'll definitely happen.
Yeah. I don't mind being one of them. So one of the other things that I found interesting is this TV series, The 100. It's about a dystopian future where there's a small group of people left, and you have some people they thought died, but they are not dead. They have evolved into some creatures and all that, right? But there's a group of people who are having something which Elon Musk is saying a neural link kind of a thing, a chip which they put it in their brain, and it helps them think, but it helps them, like some of these people are like more like drug addicts and criminals and all that. It helps them rewire their thought process. So do you see us going in that direction?
I mean, I'm enough. I guess I believe it's certainly possible, and we'll see it happening. I mean, you think, I mean, effectively, that's what any kind of mental illness drugs are in a way, really. Like they're altering the brain chemistry so that people can function in a different way. And some of those drugs actually allow people to rewire their brain chemistry in such a way that they can go off the drug completely. Others they're kind of dependent on for the rest of their life. But in a way, we have been already doing that with drugs. So I don't see why it wouldn't be more also possible with technology. I think the limiting factor is that we don't know. One of the interesting things about brains, right, is we know that superstructure wise, it's very similar. Everyone's got a cerebellum, everyone's got a frontal cortex. Other than barring brain injuries, we have all the same components, and as far as we can tell, the same components have the same overall function in our heads. But the actual cortical circuits that are used for specific things vary a little bit between people, and we know that that when one part of the brain is injured, we're capable of relearning some of those skills using different parts of the brain. So there's all this flexibility in the mind. So the big open question for that technology is, if you put a chip here that does XYZ in patient A, will it do the same thing in patient B? Because as you get more and more specific of the thing you're trying to influence, I would think it becomes less and less likely it's in exactly the same spot for every human. But that's me. That's me speculating.
Yeah, I think one thing is very interesting with social media. We haven't had this much population in the world, right, throughout history, and we haven't had this much of data, which is not really exposed, of humans interacting with each other in detail, and the humans expressing their thoughts, right? So now we are looking at neural link type of stuff where you'll have AI accessing some deep down secrets of people and really understanding their behavior. And depending on how much of that thought, if this is me trying to think far ahead, where you will have technology that kind of can read our mental thoughts, can know what we are dreaming, let's say, and that is deciphered. And then you have another teacher kind of AI, which is trying to become your higher self. And so this brings me to this final topic for today's discussion, AI and consciousness, basically. How do you see AI and consciousness progressing?
Yeah, it's an awesome topic, right? I think that for a long time, people in cognitive science and AI research have just steered away from the entire topic of consciousness and put it in the sort of too hard basket. But if you read the way that people spoke about evaluating intelligence, and even like, is something truly AGI or not, I think it kind of betrays that people were thinking like ideas about consciousness bleed into those discussions of what it really means. I mean, I guess we always thought part of when people talk about things like, does ChatGPT really understand the question when it gives you a response? A lot of the way people think about that betrays that their notion of understanding is kind of bleeding into their notion of consciousness. They don't separate those two things. And I think that the strangest thing about I think, for a lot of people with this current wave of technology is that we have to take seriously the idea that we could have something that has intelligence that's maybe not exactly, it's not exactly the same as human intelligence, but has a level of intelligence that has a phenomenal amount of capability, but not be conscious. Even though, I mean, some people believe they have some version of consciousness, but we have to entertain the idea that intelligence and consciousness are actually cleanly separable from each other. And I know you've got lots of ideas around this.
Yeah, I think the term consciousness used interchangeably with a lot of things, right? It's very similar to the term religion. Like religion means a lot of things to a lot of people, and consciousness means a lot of things to a lot of people. But I mean, the definition of consciousness is the easy problem of consciousness and the hard problem of consciousness, which are more defined, well defined. It's going to be very interesting, as because the hard problem of consciousness basically says that you cannot prove that somebody else is conscious or not.
Yeah.
So you can only know it yourself that you are
Yeah.
conscious. So I don't know if you are conscious. You could be totally an AI bot. Yes. I mean, so it's an interesting topic. So I'm going to give a separate talk on this in this forum here later.
Do you think that consciousness is testable?
No, it's the easy problem of consciousness is testable, like more of the cognitive processes that we have.
Yeah.
And this is what AI can really replicate: sensory perception of consciousness, aspects of consciousness. But what actually the hard problem of consciousness basically states that there's something within us that does not age and is experiencing the outside world. And that something within us was the same when we were a child, it's the same as now, and it will be the same when we die. It is experiencing the world. So that's where spirituality and religion come into play. And that's why we need to kind of revisit religion and spiritual definitions of consciousness more from a philosophical perspective. And that's what I'm going to talk about later. But I just want to go something back about does AI really think? I mean, do people really think, right? If we think about it, there's a lot of things that we do and the behavior of the society around us. It's not really based on individual thought process. It's based on a very, crowd behavior plays a big role in how we think and behave. And that's where the cultural element, they say, comes in, and also ancestral historic elements. Anyway, so is there anything else you want to say about to our listeners about the future of AI and how relating to your book, or anything in general?
Nothing particular right now, but I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to delve into it.
Okay, thank you, John. I'll just.
Oh, sorry. I would say quickly, I have got a. I'm actually working on a book called Dialogues on Artificial Intelligence. It's partly inspired by these ideas, because I think one of the things that's exciting is language models made a lot of people really interested in the philosophy of AI and the philosophy of mind again. So I'm writing a small book. It's dialogues between two fictitious postgraduate students in computer science about probing the boundaries of what AI can and can't do. And I'm kind of doing it rolling back in time. So it's the same students before the language model revolution and then after the language model revolution, and sort of talking through these ideas. So that'll be, I'm sort of working on that.
All right, that's great. So just if there's any questions in the floor or any comments, anybody, any aspect that you want to ask, anything you want to ask John?
I'm just coming from the university. I just want to know, what is your advice? Do you think it is worthwhile to use like LLMs for course design, something like? And if you know if it has been done already. Like to involve AI in designing and teaching and like individual assessments of the courses.
I think so. I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't outsource your own core thinking. Like, you should think about what your job is, and then that thinking should be yours. But the language models are super useful if you basically want a like your own personal reviewer and sparring partner to say, okay, here's my course outline. Is there anything I'm missing? Like, are there any topics that I'm missing, or this is how I plan to teach this? Is there a problem with that kind of didactic strategy, right? So the idea is that I wouldn't use them as the source for the core of your ideas, for all those bias problems I spoke about before, but to get some inspiration or particularly some reflection on what you're already thinking and doing, I think they're fantastic.
Well, thank you. But just like one other question is, say if you're teaching a course, so nowadays the course is based on like a textbook, for example, and you assess students based on that textbook.
Yeah.
But if you include AI, now you have everything available about that topic, not necessarily
Just the textbook.
the technique which is coming from the textbook. So in that sense, can AI be used to only like use textbook but extend a little bit further, but to use this in the assessments?
Absolutely. So I think it's similar to what we were speaking about before, with the way very strong developers use code generation. They have a file that describes the kind of thing in detail what they want. You could do the same thing. I'm looking this is a mathematical topic I'm exploring. Here's the kinds of examples that the students have already been exposed to. I want problems that sort of expand upon that in these sort of 3 areas or something like that. That way you're heavily constraining what it's doing.
How easy will it be to be done by a person like me with experience?
I think you could do that even with the sort of simple commercial, even free ones. If you prepared a document to upload, that it should work for you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a graduate, almost a graduate student who are finding some jobs. So I see, also the industry and the research communities. One of the things that interesting me is that some of the AI things, including the large language model, or some things including some agents, it is working with closely in another area, like someone combine large language model with the biology, combine with the psychology, as those things. So what are you thinking about? What is the important things? One, I think maybe it's the data, the quality of data, how we pre-processing the data, and maybe the second is the algorithm. What is the new algorithm or some specific algorithm? But some algorithm is like a black box transformer or something transformer. So one is now we don't know how they learn in those models. We can't make up 100% according to those the interpretation. What is the doing? What is operation in those models? So what is the things that you think it is the more important between those things, 2 things using those?
Between the data and the algorithm.
Yes.
Yeah. I would add, so it depends a little bit on the problem. I mean, data is obviously always, I would still rank data above the algorithm, because I think it's a truism generally that you can, with enough data, you can get good results with fairly simple models. It may be true that you can get better results with a more complicated model, but more data generally helps you do well with a simple model. So data is always worthwhile pursuing first. I think the other key thing is that one thing that I've said to a lot of people in industry is that I'm thinking about the way you test a system is probably the most important task, right? So having rigorous testing of your algorithms in a way that emulates real world behavior. So your test is designed to simulate how the algorithm would actually be used in the real world. And the more rigorous you are with that, the more you're able to just throw and experiment with different techniques, because your testing is so robust.
Yes, we're talking according to the AI, we consider the generalization and the robustness. So how can we define what is the good data? It don't have any benchmark with those maybe the new area. So how could we define the data is good, good quality?
So I guess there's a couple of things there. At least in industry, a large part of the job is, I mean, we borrowed a term, I think, that comes from statistics, which is the data generating process. So understanding any data set you're giving, understanding where it came from. And I mean, just not like who emailed it to you. I mean, what sensors were used to collect it on what devices, like, and on what system, like tracing back and understanding how the data got to you along every step of the way is really, really important, because often what you find is there's some certain data missing for some reason. Like a common example could be you've got a data set that's a log file, but the logging only happened when certain thing happened to certain machines in that process. So when that thing wasn't happening, the data wasn't logged. So tracing the data back allows you to realize what the blind spots in the data are, if that makes sense, right? So it's not a great answer. I recognize that, but knowing good data means partly you have to trace back where the data comes from, and you have to trace back what the business process looks like, so you can think about all the parts of the data that maybe you don't even have yet.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's also complexities. Anyone who working in the algorithm maybe don't care about the raw data, where is the sensors has sampled in the data size.
Yes.
So consider with the new research, so like those conferences is nearby, and a lot of my friends was pricing with those conference like the new research like those one. So they are consider about using AI, maybe 50% using AI to do something in their paper, because the time is a limit. And when they see some of the feedback according to their supervisor are also using AI, so they feeling disappointed with those scenario. So what do you think about those scenario?
The scenario of,
yes, the students using the AI,
AI
but their supervisor also using the AI had reviewed those things. That I know all the things like it is a really limitation, because there are almost 1 day and this conference is the deadline. But yes,
I think we have discussed about that. Where that's the thing. What June is highlighting is the issue where in the conferences the papers are generated by AI.
Yeah.
The reviewers are AI.
Yeah.
It's
also,
a cyclic behavior, right?
And Also, fancy things is their supervisor want to review their paper. Maybe they written a paper, like my friend said to me, he written the paper almost during 1 year.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the experiments is in here, but his supervisor using the AI, and he know AI really good. So he know this is the format it's come from AI. So he think his supervisor didn't care about him. So this is all the things that I know some things that we can't consider too much, but some of the factors make the whole thing, maybe the education, not only the reviewer, but the education fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is that there's a mixture of goals of all the people involved, right? The student wants to get the paper just done, so they can get it on their CV, so they can get a job. The reviewers want to make sure that they get papers into the conference that are actually adding value and are going to be cited. The supervisor has this mixed goal of also wanting to get papers done because it's good for their career, but also wanting to make sure that the student actually knows the thing that they're writing about, because the goal is to teach them. It's not just that they get a paper out, it's actually that they've learned something in the process. So it's in a way, those goals are all conflicting with each other a little bit.
A little bit.
I think what you mentioned earlier today as well, how you were saying like recruiters and applicants, how applicants, now that AI is invented, the resumes are piling in more and more, right? Quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
And the reviewers can't review all of them, right?
Yeah.
So obviously they're gonna look into more efficient way to review that.
Yeah.
I feel like comparing that scenario with the job market scenario, the academic scenario, job market scenario, it just sounds like there's an influx in volume instead of quality. So then because AI is introduced, the volume has gone higher.
Yeah.
So then as the other side, the reviewer, the supervisor, in their position, they have to tap into those technology too.
Yeah.
But then if they do that, it would sound like they're not genuine.
Yeah.
So then, I don't know, that's causing a little bit of a
Yeah,
spark.
I totally agree, right? So to June's case, if you get back a review from your supervisor and it's very different if if you think it's a fair review that actually makes sense for your paper, it doesn't really matter if it was AI generated and then your supervisor just reviewed and said, yes, I agree with that, versus if you get back something that clearly doesn't understand the paper. That's and the reality is that used to happen before AI generation. Like I've had multiple papers. You've had it as well. You get back a review. It's pretty clear that the reviewer didn't really understand the paper.
Yeah, I mean the reviews post AI and pre AI are all quite bad actually. And sometimes some of these AI reviews actually are quite useful in improving your paper. I think when they're talking more about technical issues, your figures or plots, maybe you have some grammar issues, some things are not. That's what AI is really useful, more for technical improvement of the paper.
Yeah.
But I think it's not really very good for, because it really messes up the scope of the paper. It starts to ask you to really do a lot more work to get it accepted, which is beyond the scope of your work. It can be another paper. That's the complaint, and that's when we need the associate editor who's a human reviewer to say, now, sorry, that's enough,
And the reason that would happen is because in their prompt, they probably say, identify how this paper should be improved in terms of its scope. And the model, because it wants to please them, comes up with something. It doesn't have any way of saying, no, the scope is perfect, leave the paper alone.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so these discussions will continue. So this is one of the first for this year in our group. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and looking forward to future discussions. Thank you, John.
Thanks, mate. No?
Yeah.